All right, a good introduction starts with names. I'm introducing communication studies this week, so I should probably start with a quick discussion about names. In particular, I'm going to talk about the name of the course and the name of the discipline. Our course is called Survey of Communication Studies, and I put a picture of a surveyor here, and that's because I want to really emphasize the metaphor that's in the title of the name of the course. A surveyor, right, goes out and maps a terrain. They try to get a visual image of the ground or the field in front of them. And I want us to take that metaphor seriously when we're thinking about this course. What are we doing in this course? We are trying to kind of survey the field or the terrain or the discipline of communication studies. So communication studies is the name of what we might call the discipline or the field that we're in, that this course is in. And the goal of our course is to get a broad view of that field. In the U.S., we generally call the field that I'm in two different names, either communication or communication studies. Both of those are pretty popular right now. Notice that communication is also the name of the thing that we're studying. So it's the name of both the discipline and the thing that is being studied. So communication, that word could mean sometimes the discipline and sometimes the phenomenon that's being studied. We study the process of human communication, and that's a singular word there. Notice there's no S on the end of these words. I often hear students refer to their communications courses. Well, that's not the name we use, and that's not what we study. Communications, when I hear the word communications, I think things like emails. Like emails are communications. And so that's not what we are meaning here. Communications programs, which you will see in U.S. universities, are different than the field that I'm in. And those programs tend to focus on the technical aspects of sending a message. So they're telecommunications, TV, radio, newspapers, and the internet. So I study communication, singular, humans speaking to one another, making sense out of their world, not communications, plural. To confuse you even further, if you're confused, in England they do use the term communications to refer to what we study here. But what do they know? They also call maths. So just don't worry about that. We're talking about the U.S. here in this course. So here's a little graphic to help you remember. Drake's going to emphasize this. No communications. Yes, communication class. I also want to talk a bit about capitalization because you're going to notice in the textbook that the author will sometimes capitalize the word communication. And I really wish that they didn't do that. So we're going to set that aside, and I'm just going to ask you to ignore how the author of our textbook uses capitalization. When you're doing your writing and when I'm writing for this class, basically we're going to try to follow this rule. Don't capitalize communication. Either way, if you're talking about the discipline or the phenomenon of human communication, either way, don't capitalize it. And don't capitalize the word communication studies either. That is, unless it comes in a title, like the title of a book or the title of a department, or at the beginning of a sentence, because you always capitalize the first word of every sentence. So here's some examples for you to kind of emphasize how this should look. She took a class in communication studies. It's the name of the discipline, lowercase. The only disciplines that get capitalized are languages like English, Spanish, French, because we always capitalize languages in English. So psychology, lowercase. Communication studies, lowercase. I study communication. That's lowercase. We're talking about the process of human communication here. I read a book called Human Communication. Okay, it gets capitalized because it's a title, right? But that's the only reason. I'm in the Department of Communication. That gets capitalized because it's the title of the department. I'm a communication studies major. Okay, so that's just a brief note on capitalization. And finally, I want to leave you with a note on grammar, because this gets confusing. Communication studies is plural, but as a discipline, it's singular. It's one discipline. So treat communication studies as a singular noun when talking about the discipline. So communication studies is important. The discipline of communication studies, one thing, is important, not are important, okay? This gets confusing. Use it as a plural noun when you're not talking about the discipline, but are instead talking about a set of individual studies that are done on communication. So many communication studies are scientific. Many of these particular studies that were done scientifically. So that's the final thing I want to leave you with. Know the name of the course, Communication Studies, a survey of communication studies. Know the name of the discipline, Communication Studies. Thanks for listening.